Okay, hi guys. Thank you to everyone who's done the assessment. I'll ping the mark scheme up onto Insight as well so you can have a read through it. But I just wanted to go through some of the answers with you. It was a low scoring assessment for most people, and pretty much everyone got 12 or 13, which says a lot really. And it says what it really says is that the mark scheme is very specific, because I think the questions were sort of fair. And I think you answered them pretty well, but you didn't always score the points for them. So what I really want to do is just have a look at what biology mark scheme is actually looking for in terms of where you're getting marks and where you're not. So question 1, no problems, you all got that right. So you know your definitions, which is great, because you should do. Right, question 2 then was about global warming. It says some people, or most people, think the increase in global temperatures is due to an increased carbon dioxide. Explain how carbon dioxide levels could lead to global warming. So this is the mechanism of carbon dioxide trapping heat. So it's quite specific. How does carbon dioxide level lead to global warming? Well, you've got to really talk about what a greenhouse gas is. Loads of you mentioned the fact that it's a greenhouse gas, but you didn't say how. You said why. Right? Why does it affect it? Because it's a greenhouse gas. It makes it go up. Not how. So how does it do it? Carbon dioxide absorbs infrared radiation that is radiated from the surface of the planet. So think about what happens in terms of global warming. Don't forget the greenhouse effect is a positive thing. Global warming is an increased greenhouse effect, which is a negative thing. So what happens? We get infrared radiation from the sun, heat. Okay, I'm feeling it quite strongly today. And that warms up the surface of the planet. That warm surface of the planet then radiates that heat, radiates longer wave infrared radiation back into space. So that's what happens. Infrared radiation from the sun warms the surface of the planet. That infrared is radiated back into space. If all of it did that, it'd be incredibly cold at night. We'd have a nighttime temperature of about -200, because that's what the moon is. But we have this blanket of greenhouse gases around the surface of the planet. What they do, and carbon dioxide is a prime example, is they absorb infrared radiation in the bonds, and they cause the bonds to vibrate. As they absorb that infrared radiation, they trap it, or trap a proportion of it, which means that it keeps the Earth nice and warm. An increased concentration of carbon dioxide will basically be able to trap more infrared. So it's asking the how. So it absorbs infrared radiation, and that sort of traps heat radiation there. So this is what the mark scheme is looking for. Okay, NE2 allows sun's rays, infrared rays to pass through to the atmosphere. Carbon dioxide stops or reduces the re-radiated radiation infrared back into space, because carbon dioxide reflects back the radiation or heat or infrared. It does say allow, traps or absorbs. I wouldn't say it reflects back the radiation, because that's not true. It absorbs it in the bonds. But that's arguably a higher tier answer. So there's 2 marks there, and that's 2 marks most people missed, because you did the why, not the how. Now I'm functionally blind now, so I'm trying to read that there. So here we go, right, scrolling. Question 3 was another one people struggled with a little bit. Many people think that removing peat from peat bogs should be stopped. An alternative is the outer coating from coconuts. This is a waste product. Explain the advantages of this example of sustainable development. So that's the key bit of this. So talking about it reduces waste doesn't get you any marks. It says ignore references to avoiding waste or less landfill. So why is it good? Well, it's going to it's obviously not going to put the peat bogs at risk. It's going to reduce usage of peat, and that's a very valuable ecosystem. So quite a few people got a mark for talking about the fact that it preserves peat and the ecosystems in peat. If you didn't mention that, that's quite important. The second mark really here is sustainable development. What does sustainable development mean? It means that we're using resources now but have enough for future generations. And in this case, that's because coconuts are being produced all of the time, so they are not going to run out. So coconuts are being produced at a faster rate than peat, so we'll not run out. Any variation on the theme. You could talk about carbon dioxide, but these 2 marks here were probably marks that most people missed. Right, question 4, deforestation. We were pretty good on deforestation, because you know what you're talking about. It's just really picky mark schemes. And this one didn't. So deforestation, two things. One, obviously cutting down trees reduces photosynthesis, so that stops carbon dioxide being absorbed. Two, you can talk about burning of wood. When you get rid of it, releases carbon dioxide. Or some of you went down the route of the vehicles being used to cut down the trees or transport the wood, burn fossil fuels, which releases carbon dioxide. You could have gone down the route of decomposers or microorganisms respire as they break down the debris. Personally, I'd have gone for that one, and I'd have gone for that one. Cutting down trees decreases photosynthesis. Burning wood increases combustion. I'd have gone down that. Right, this next question is a very thinly veiled question about eutrophication. So, a dairy farmer washes out his cow shed every day. The wastewater contains urine and feces. So, what have we got there? We've got fertilisers. Urine contains urea. Cow manure is a brilliant fertiliser. So, this is a question about fertilisers in water. It will affect the plants and invertebrates. Explain why. So, this is eutrophication. Now, loads you got sort of 4 marks on this because you didn't quite mention 2 key things. The things most people missed was talking about algae. People didn't use the word eutrophication. Some people didn't talk about bacteria. But that's the key, the thing for sort of 5 or 6 marks. So eutrophication crops up quite a lot. What is eutrophication? The fertiliser washes into the water. What that does is it causes the algae, particularly algae at the surface, to grow incredibly fast. So the algae grow incredibly quickly. What does that do? Well, that does 2 things. But the main thing it does is it blocks out light. It blocks out light reaching the plants below it. The aquatic plants living at the bottom, those aquatic plants die because they haven't got enough light for photosynthesis. So what happens next? Well, then you've got bacteria or microorganisms or decomposers feast on that sort of plant matter, that decaying plant matter, and what they do is they aerobically break it down, they aerobically respire, so they take up all of the oxygen in the water. If they take up, sorry, I'm being attacked by insects. If they take up all the oxygen in the water, that means that all the other things die. Animal life, the invertebrates die. That's eutrophication. So for 6 marks, that's pretty much what I talk about. Okay, nutrients go into the water, the algae grow very quickly, they block out the light, so all the aquatic plants die due to lack of photosynthesis. As the aquatic plants die, then bacteria break them down, they remove all the oxygen from the water, and all the other aquatic life, invertebrates, fish, things like that, die as well. That's called eutrophication. One of the other things about this isn't actually in the mark scheme, is the reason why eutrophication can be a problem is all that pondweed growing can then stop the water flowing. Because if you've got nice flowing water, then eutrophication doesn't happen because you get fresh water coming in. But that's not on the mark scheme. Right, question 5 was a question that most people struggled with a little bit. So let's have a look at this. Describe and explain the possible impact of each environmental change on the distribution of species in an ecosystem. So, how are the seasons going to change the distribution of organisms in an ecosystem? Well, what do the seasons do? You've got the trees. They obviously lose their leaves in winter. That's going to reduce the number of habitats and the amount of food for various animals. So you might find colder conditions, for instance, mean later flowering times for plants. You could talk about the fact that plants lose their leaves, which causes loss of habitats. What's that do? Well, you might get changes in hibernation patterns. The animals might hibernate, they might migrate. So any 2 of those really you could talk about. You could talk about animals becoming extinct because they can't adapt to the change in the season. Geographic position. So what's that mean? How would an organism react to changing its position on the planet? I think this is a difficult question to answer, and a lot of you struggled with it. So if you move to different parts of the planet, what are you going to notice? You're going to notice either more seasonal variation or less seasonal variation. You're either going to get longer days and nights, or a difference in days and nights, and that can have a significant effect. Let's say you are a nocturnal feeder, and suddenly your night is shorter and your day is longer. That's going to cause problems. So that I thought was a difficult one to answer, and again I think the mark seems quite specific. Somebody gave a really good a good answer based on the fact that if a plant was in an area where there wasn't a lot of wind, they'd have difficulty being able to distribute seeds. It's a brilliant answer, not on the mark scheme. Right, human interaction is the easiest one. How does human interaction affect the biodiversity, or have an effect on organisms? So what happens is you lose natural habitats because we use that for farming, for food, for all sorts of things. We end up with new artificial ecosystems. We build parks and organisms like all that, and you might get less natural behaviour exhibited. So foxes don't naturally go through bins. This is learned behaviour because of the encroachment of human beings. Things like that. So there's a variety of things there you could have gone with. I think it was a difficult question to get right, that, to be honest. The last one was a spiral question. So first one then was to allow implantation of the embryo. Everyone got that right, so well done. Right, and then the next one was looking at the range. Most of you got the sort of 13 to 14 mark, which got you the mark. Someone was out with 27. But I think on the whole, we did really well there, guys. So, doesn't look like a particularly good result, this one. It doesn't look like you've smashed it with marks of 12 or 13. But what that says to me is you know what you're talking about. You just need to be a little bit more careful with reading some of the questions. The fact you were really good on the whole with the eutrophication question, which is the areas people find difficult, suggests you've learned it. The fact you didn't do quite so well with the question on carbon dioxide is just being really careful with reading the question. So, well done, guys. What I want you to do is green pen your way through your test. So I'll put this on Insight as well. I want you to have a read through, green pen your way through it, and that's pretty much us for the day. This module is now finished, right? From here on in, we're kicking off with space. So next lesson will be the space module, and you'll find that on Insight. There's a couple of videos for that one because there's quite a lot to talk about in the first one. So, any problems, questions, comments, queries or concerns, you know where to find me. Otherwise, guys, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you soon.